Hey, my name is Eli Steele, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Eli makes movies, and I guess you don't give a damn about what the industry generally thinks. You make what you want to make. Some of these stories are challenging, and I love that about what you're doing. So, first off, thanks for coming on the show. And how did you find yourself in this particular portion of the movie making world?
I think a lot of it was just through trial and error. I mean, I
Okay.
started off, writing screenplays. I probably written about maybe 15, yeah, about 15, but they were always a little too controversial
Mm,
for the industry. So, like for example, one of them was about slaves that came back to life today through through a
mm,
miracle, and what it would be like for him to fight for freedom in today's world. So it's kind of a
right.
comedy. But that was we did that maybe in 2005. So you should
Hmm.
imagine that Hollywood was just not open to that. I mean, it got a good
Yeah.
reception in a way, but it was just too hard. We
Right.
did another one on the very first black horse jockeys after the Civil War. So the
Mm, okay.
jockeys in Kentucky were black. And it's a great story because they achieved great fame and great wealth. And in the time right before segregation came in, and one of
Hmm.
them won 3 Kentucky Derbies. And yeah, again, you would think that would be state, but for some reason, Hollywood didn't want to touch him.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and raised enough money, made my own film, won about 12 film festivals. The idea pilot with MTV called Katrina about 2 hurricane survivors who end up with San Francisco with this yuppie family, fish out of the water. It was well done. And we didn't get the green light though for a series. And so at that point, I was just like, oh, shit, okay, I've got a kid now. I was
Yeah.
married at the time, and I was like, okay, I need to get a real job. And so I went back to graduate school to Pepperdine School of Public Policy and got a degree there and got the great work from home public policy job that I had for about 8 years. While I
Hmm.
was doing that, that allowed me to actually say, you know what, I can't give up film. I love film too much to give up to it. But what can I do? I have no money. I have no connection. I've lost all my connection because the 2008 crash just devastated the
Right.
industry. Yeah, so a lot of the people I knew were gone. And so I said, well, I could go back to the very first thing I ever did when I was 14, 15, which was make documentaries. That's how I actually
Yeah.
really started. So I actually went back to the very first impulse, and I spent the next 5 years doing what's called a paycheck film, meaning you take a little bit of your paycheck every month, you use it to pay for your film. And
Right.
that film was how Jack became black. And that kind of got me to where I am today.
Yeah. When you find these stories, I mean, I want to hear about a post Civil War jockey, especially if he's black and in Kentucky. Like, that sounds incredible. But you're right. So without putting any politics in any of this, there is a marketplace, and the movie industry is always trying to understand its audience, and they get it wrong a lot of the time. And how many times, like one of the best stories is nobody in Hollywood thought that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito could make a comedy film with Ivan Reitman. And so they just paid for it themselves and they made it. And it turned out Hollywood was wrong and the public loved it. Right. And it's the movie that they made the most money on because they owned so much of it. And that's the thing is like you're always trying. I was just having this conversation I'm working on a couple projects myself, and we were talking about this one project, and in one way of telling that story, there doesn't seem to be a market today, but sometimes you set the market. Sometimes you lose all your money, so it's very risky. And so it's not just, I don't want people just to race to the politics side. Yes, there's a certain political lean. Yes, there's a certain way to do business, but there's also just the business of that business. And unless you have names, and there's only a few of those, someone else is betting on your idea, and that's scary for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have to be thankful for the technology today.
Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah.
mean, we have, an iPhone. It's pretty much better quality than anything that we had in the 80s,
Yeah.
90s, 2000. And so you pretty much have no excuse, I think, in today's world to not make a movie. But back then, yes, Hollywood was very dependent upon connection. It was very dependent upon playing the game in a way. And I didn't really, either through naivete or something, just never really played the game, never really did the. I always thought, I'd rather just focus on, developing my writing, developing my
Yeah.
talent. So even though I spent all those years on screenplays that really kind of went nowhere, it gave me the ability to tell stories. And I think that translates over to my documentaries,
Sure.
which are a little bit unorthodox in the storytelling. Like I don't follow the typical 60 minutes or typical type of film. This kind of goes this way, but it has a structure to it. It comes back
Yeah.
to the main point. And I got that from just writing, from the creativity. So yeah, so you are right. The Hollywood itself is just this house, but can you go outside the house and create a better party, create a better experience? Absolutely. I mean, one of the most famous is Rocky, a film that
Yeah.
still holds up to this day. Nobody
Yeah.
wanted to fund it, and he made a
Yeah.
great film. I mean, to this day, it's one of my kids' favorite films, and I'm sure that even as each generation go by, it's still going to be a favorite. Sure,
Yeah.
that's one. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's why I never like to complain about Hollywood or be treated unfairly or anything like that. I wasn't. It's
Yeah.
just I just didn't succeed in that game,
Yeah.
but I still
There's
found another way.
yeah, and that's the thing, and you're right. Like the technology has democratized filmmaking. The next time someone shoots a movie for $2,000 and it makes 100 times that amount of money, like this happens. I don't want to say all the time, but it happens consistently, and so you are allowed. And by the way, when you make that $2,000 movie and it does make 100,000 or $200,000 or whatever it is, which is entirely like that's not an impossible dream. Then someone says, "I wonder what you would do with 10 million." And then maybe you get to make another one, and you could still be in the indie world because a $10 million film in the indie world is a $25 million film in the union world. And nothing against the union world, but there's all these different avenues to approach what you're trying to do. And if someone is hardy enough and rugged enough and can withstand all of the pain by taking more of the load on yourself, you do get more freedom, and you get to decide what the market might like. Again, you might get it wrong, might lose all your money because it's highly speculative. But yeah, there's a real path for someone to start small, tell a 5 minute story, tell a 15-minute story. You can build a career that way, and then save your money up and get to tell the big story that you want to tell. That might take you 10 years to get there, but movies take 10 years to make all the time. That's a common thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always done, low budget film. I mean, I've always done that.
When you say low budget, what do you mean?
Like low budget could be, I would probably say about 500,000 or under.
Okay.
Where,
Okay.
but that'd be 500,000 over maybe 3 years.
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, so when you spread it over 3 years, like for a documentary, because you have to pay yourself. Then you also got to pay the music, color, all the other stuff. I do the editing myself, so I'm working
Sure.
on one film every day. After this interview, I'm back to working on the film right here. But what I like about the low budget in a way is they forces creativity. I think
Right.
it forces you to be more creative. So, for example, my father and I are doing a book, a documentary on his book, White Guilt, and we're
Okay.
adapting that book to today's world. And there's so many photos in it, and I'm sitting there going, like, well, how do I? And the photos are kind of low quality because they're so old. They're from the 60s and the 70s, and I try AI. Successful with some of them, not so successful. But then I'm sitting there going, well, how do I come up with some ways to make the photos interesting? And I had my iPhone, and I just, kind of recorded the photos like this and move it in almost like a zoom on it because I'm filming them in 8 millimeter style.
Mm.
Yeah, and it was, I don't trust myself. I showed it to a couple other people. They know we like that. I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
You just came up with something that might have taken. Oh, if I gave that to a production house and told them to do that with the photo in the computer, that would probably cost about $50,000.
Right.
And now
Yeah.
I do, so my point is, this is all that creativity. So that's what I think, that's why we worry about the money. If you got a story, the thing is, people will appreciate the creativity. They will appreciate a great story. They will appreciate that. And that's something
Yeah.
that is universal. And Hollywood
Yeah.
produces some crap these days that you actually, if
Oh
you
my
have a great
gosh.
story, you actually have a shot. I mean, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, quite often the real story that's there gets obscured and they tell a formula of a story and you're like, but the real person's real life was interesting. Why did you throw all of these other issues that weren't there or weren't the main point of the story? There's a lot of that where Hollywood they it's almost like boilerplate and they have so much boilerplate there's no room for the actual meat of the story, like, oh, we have to make sure we account for this and we have to account for that and we have to account for, and all these things have to be accounted for because that's what the formula, and I'm not trying to say anything political, but there isn't politics in that. And so as you try to perform all these things, these acts that you have to act within the movie, you're choking the life out of that real story. That jockey. Oh my God, I want to know what happens with that story, right? But we would have to do so much white guilt and all these other things that would have to go into this story that would take away, I don't know, 20 minutes of the movie would have to suck out, these other things to abide some kind of norms that aren't relevant to the story. So instead of just celebrating this person's life, we we take away from it and then the story's just muted. It's like you're chopping your arm off to say, hey, let's go play baseball. Let me chop my arm off first. And then you sew your arm back on and you're like, this thing doesn't work right. And that's, I don't know why we have to do that, but we certainly do.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I agree with you. But I always find it the most I get the most powerful moments are the ones that sort of are spontaneous, that you respect. And like for example, right now I'm doing a session in the White Gill film on Jodie Shaw, the
Hmm.
woman from Smith College who was basically they try and make her white, and she refused, and she said, "No, you're not gonna do that." And she's now suing the college for discrimination. But there was a moment, and so I'm following kind of the formula. Hey, what this shoot, because the film's it's a be over 2 hours, and I'm worried because I'm in a time where everybody's worried about time, and so I'm
Yeah.
worried about time. And I said, okay, it has to really work and move the story forward in order to stay in the film. And if it goes over 2 hours, I'm fine with that. But I am worried about the limits as well. But there was this moment where I didn't even notice this. And I was like, okay, I'm almost done with the session. And then I started thing where she's looking at the camera, directly into the camera. And then I'm doing the interviewing. And so my father's sitting over there. And she just looks over at my father and she's saying, I don't know, Shelby. Can you not have hope? In
Yeah.
other words, can you not? And so it's a powerful moment because it's a powerful moment where she's being vulnerable,
Yeah.
where she basically asking my own father, who's gone through this journey himself for 40 years, and she's asking him, how can we not have hope? there gotta be hope. Now, does it have anything to do with the theme? Yeah, not directly, but yet, because it shows the humanity of that situation. That's something that you can pay for, you can script. But as a
Mm.
filmmaker, that's something that you should recognize and that needs to go into the film. That's the bottom.
Yeah.
That's where the audience is they go, okay, I get it. I understand this toll that this is taking on this moment.
How do you decide what the audience needs so that you can make it for them, or do you even abide the audience very much? Do you just think, because like like with my show, I kind of don't worry about what the audience wants, because if they like what I like, then they're going to like the show, right? And I don't control who gets to see it, because distribution is limited by algorithms and things that I'm not allowed to know about. So I don't worry too much about what the audience wants or needs. I just worry about what's fascinating to me.
Yeah, but I think that you have to consider, as a filmmaker, you are making a product at the end of the day. You are making a piece of communication.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, art, whatever you want to call it, but you're making a medium. And so my job is to try to get out of the way as much as possible and let the people tell their story.
Mm.
So
Mm.
when I see that clip on Jodie, and when she breaks the what's it called, the fourth wall, and the story of my father, and we the audience, they'd be like, okay, and I said that's a powerful moment, because it takes the audience off that track and makes her lean into Jodie. Hear Jodie express herself, because she's a very strong woman, and then
Mm.
you hear her say, you know what, I've got 2 kids. I still got my life. I can't give up hope. Okay, now we know. Okay, the toll of this indoctrination is so forth. So I, as the filmmaker, have to say, yeah, that's important, because the audience needs to understand it. The audience is to be let worse or less than, less than,
Mm.
if they don't see that piece of information. And so I'm sure you're creating an experience for the audience. And because that's when I kind of say, okay, once the film is gone, I mean, that's what other filmmakers have said, and I believe that once the film is gone, it's not my film anymore.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's where you make up it. I can't control where you make up it, but I can control the process up to that.
Yeah.
And that for me is to really make the issues, to make my father's voice come through loud and clear.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. You're making a product for someone, and you have to communicate well, right? And then once you sent that message out, you don't get it back. It's out, and whatever it comes back to you, you have to listen. And if it becomes a bad message back to you, even if it's a null value, you have got to figure out how to do a better job communicating on the next one, right? And so, yeah, yeah. And again, this is what Hollywood is struggling with. It's what Disney is struggling with. They've got people unsubscribing and not participating because of messages that they've sent out, right? And good or bad intention, whatever, who cares about that? But that's how hard all of this stuff is, right? I mean, these networks and show hosts. Back to the independence thing, we just saw Jimmy Kimmel have a kerfluffle in his career. I don't know that Jimmy Kimmel needs ABC. If he chose to go and write a weekly column on Substack and host his own show on YouTube or Twitter or wherever, I think he'd have more control, and he'd make more money, because he'd own more of the kill than having to share it with ABC. And that's a real thing. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Tucker Carlson, but I can see what his numbers are, and I'm like, holy shit, guys, kill. I know what it means when you have 100 million people watch anything you've done. Like, I know what that means. That's a lot of money, and so it's regular that people can be bigger than the Super Bowl multiple times in a year. I mean, that happens, and Jimmy Kimmel's famous enough for that. So we really can do what we want to do as long as our audience will abide it.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting, because I mean, it created I guess, a very factional landscape. We've got all these different factions going on, except they're like podcast king. So it'd be interesting to see, what the future holds when the message become more
Yeah.
decentralized in a way.
Yeah.
Because 'cause I think a lot of people are kind of realizing that, like, maybe intellectuals they have no online presence are kind of realizing that they are behind the game.
Yeah.
That the people they have the true power, have the audience numbers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a real thing there. And if ABC wants to survive, they're going to have to compete harder. And I don't know if it's money or control or what. I don't know if they even can, but I can't think of a single thing that I want to watch on ABC. And I couldn't tell you two shows. It didn't used to be like that. It used to be like, man, I watch this show and this night, this show and that night, but I never watch TV. It's partly because I'm an adult now and I've got other things to do, right? Like you working on your projects. You don't have time to watch network TV. But I don't watch late night TV partly because I don't want to I don't watch it to get preached at. That's not what I'm there for, And I'm not a right or left guy. I just don't want to, have. Well, frankly, I don't want to have that political messaging. Tell some jokes, get some interesting guests. Maybe I would. I doubt I'd watch now, but maybe I would watch, and you'd make a lot of money because you don't have to exclude anybody politically.
Yeah, you're right about that. The last time I ever watched a night show host was probably Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, see, yeah,
Even if we had Bill Clinton on, it was a good time. It
yeah,
was never that. I never found it to be that like politically divisive.
right,
So it's a different world today. It's a different world, and the quality of the shows are just not what they used to be. In terms of people I went to documentaries, I had the chance to go to TV round, and it was I just that's not what I want to do. That's not what I
yeah,
want to do. And my sister has a successful career in TV writing, but it was
yeah,
just I kind of said that this is not what I want to do because it's much more limited freedom. It's not why I got into filmmaking. I got into filmmaking because I love the independent.
yeah,
And I was,
yeah,
I shape it more in the studio, but I really did love the independent. And so that's what I'm doing now is my own thing, be independent. I've been fortunate enough, knock on wood, to do what I
yeah,
do. I do though work about 4 or 5 jobs.
yeah,
So I do work on. So it's not like I'm just sitting here making money off of the film. I do other work
yeah,
as well,
right,
and so I've been fortunate enough to have those side jobs to help
yeah,
me do what I do. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
that's
And like a lot of people, go ahead.
yeah. No, but I'm just saying that's why somebody like Jimmy Kimmel, sometimes the creation of the system. So the question here is, do they have the firepower, the abilities to go on their own?
Yeah, yeah. And he does. He absolutely does. I mean, I want back the fun Jimmy Kimmel who cracked me up, and the Man Show was a good, even if the Man Show probably wouldn't work today, it was great in that time. And those guys did funny skits. But I've not seen that Jimmy in a long time. And I know he's there. And I know people that know Jimmy Kimmel firsthand. And they all swear that he is a wonderful guy. I wish he'd play that guy on TV. Be that wonderful guy on TV so that we can all of us can go, what a wonderful guy. I don't care what he believes politically, but don't make me dislike you because he can't, like he's using his platform for politics. Be a comedian. Don't
Yeah,
be a
yeah,
wonk, And that would be my advice. If I was his producer, like quit being a wonk and just be a
yeah.
comedian. Better bits. Let's fire all these writers, get new writer, whatever you want to do, but let's get better bits so that we got a couple entertaining things. If you watch Carson, I'll watch old Carson all the time because I'm trying to learn like from the master. What can I do and how do I bring that to the modern times? And there's all kinds like the Karnak thing. That's not a particularly hilarious bit, but it was enjoyable. It always makes you smile. Like once one of those jokes lands, and it's just funny, and it just works. But for whatever reason, we've got too many things between the entertainment and the viewer, and that again, I think it dilutes that message.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think they
Yeah,
probably have gone into their own pushing.
yeah,
I think that's what you see in today's world is that okay, even people who are independent podcasters would say, okay, well, this is my audience. I've got
Right.
two pandas in the audience. I've got 5 million followers. I've got to deliver the same message over and over. If I was to dare backtrack off of this message or something, you know what's going to happen. You're going to have a backlash. And
Right.
so it's very difficult. I think Jimmy in on ABC has his own person. And I think that even like Tucker has his own person.
Yeah.
And so because you sit there and go like this, you go, really? Okay, so you interview this one person, and this one person then is the authority of it all. I mean, that's not how it works. No,
Yeah.
that's just one person, but there's no proper perspective. It's the greatest person ever. It's the greatest. I mean, a lot of these podcasters use the greatest person ever came on my show. And so
Yeah.
they're overstanding, they're trying to make this. So I feel like that's why I think, I've always admired somebody like my father or somebody.
Mhm.
He does not give two F what you think.
Right.
He just does not care what you think. And that's probably why he's not as popular as he could be, but he just doesn't care. He will not
Yeah.
play the game. He refused to go online. He refused. He said,
Yeah.
I'm not playing the game.
I love it.
If I have somebody to stay, I'll stay it. But I'm not going to go
Yeah.
online and work for these people. Basically, me work for the audience, because that's what you're doing. You're working for the audience. You're working to keep that money coming in.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and so that's where I think that's where truth gets a little
Mhm.
problematic.
Yeah.
Because your paycheck, your popularity, or immediately you're wrong, maybe.
Yeah.
Because you're not God. No podcaster is God.
Right.
So
You're right.
I mean, you're gonna be wrong sometimes. And the question is, do you have the humility and the security, and have you crafted a platform that allows room for that?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And boy, he said a lot of things. I was going to ask you, you know, guys like us who've created our own things. And again, I'm sort of in this movie creation business. I haven't done what you've done, but I'm on this path, right? And it is certainly possible for me to do it. And the funny thing is, like, my friends who are actual producers who have produced things, like, Pete, you just got to say you're a producer. That's what you're doing. You're producing right now. Yeah, you haven't made something, but that's later. It's all production, right? So if someone came and offered me a regular 40-hour, 60-hour a week job and said, we'd like you to come produce something, I don't know that I would say yes, even if it was a reliable paycheck. And I'm assuming the same thing is, like, if whatever Lifetime Network said, hey, we want you to start making Christmas movies for us, would you want to take your whole year and make Christmas movies? Because, like, we think you do great. Tell us an alternate Christmas story. What do you think? Like, if you got a sweet corporate gig, would you accept it, do you think? Or have you figured out the freedom end of it? Because there's so much value in getting to do what you want. Like, a thing I'm supposed to do on YouTube is do this picture and put a shocking headline, and it's like, Eli reveals secrets about horrendous, that, all that kind of. I'm not doing that, because that's not real, right? That's just, I'm not going to placate to a machine and what it thinks is desirable. I'm just going to be Pete, and you're just going to be Eli, and we're just going to talk about these things. So I don't want to have to go abide some corporate belief on what I'm supposed to do. If they gave me freedom to do what I want, and again, they're not going to do that, maybe then I would consider it, but I wouldn't. I can do anything I want, and I think I make pretty good choices overall. Would I like to make more money? Yes. Do I need to make more money? Yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I get value in so many. I get to know you now because of this show. How valuable is that? It's wonderful, all the things that you get when you have freedom and you understand where the value, the richness in life, all of these things. You don't have to have a lot of money to be rich in life.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think that's why I love my job. I guess you meet all these people. I mean, how often do you get to fly into another city, go into some local's home, put a camera in front of them, and talk to them for 2 to 5 hours, get their life story or something like that. And I think, and that's something that I cherish, and that's something that I always value and respect, because it's a very personal thing. A lot of times they even say, it's like a therapy session, because
Yeah.
usually you're interviewing somebody that had gone through trauma of some sort. I mean, I've interviewed. One of the hardest was interviewing a mother who's done committed suicide maybe only
Mm.
4 weeks before, and that was not easy to do. The other one that was difficult was the mother of one of the fallen 13 in the Afghanistan war.
Sure.
I interviewed
Sure.
actually three families, but there was one that got was particularly close to. And yeah, those are not easy, but it's a privilege to be able to go in there, get you know them, get you know what how they operate. For example, the mother of one of the fallen 13 is one of the most outspoken mothers and has been derided in the media as, I don't know, maybe kind of basically mega ultra or not of a
Right.
certain class, kind
Right.
of low class. But when you talk to her, when you get to see her, you go, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. She's
Yeah.
a firebrand, and but this is her reaction. And so I
Right.
think those stories make you richer. They make you
Yeah.
they make you I think it just makes you a better person, overall, because we're all that's why when I see people demonize these certain people, it's just kind of like, huh? Uh,
Yeah.
you may not agree with them, but if you take the time to know them,
Yeah.
then it
Sure.
changes. We did that in What Killed Michael Brown. Most of the people that
Yeah.
we interviewed were it was interesting for my father because my father was a black militant, and when he started speaking the truth about what he believed for, he became a black conservative. That was the label that the white liberals gave him.
Mm.
So he sort of been kind of stigmatized by this. And so we're going to Ferguson, and I remember we were going to meet this woman who was sort of I guess, the queen of the other side.
Mm.
And he was like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, no, we have to do that. And it turned out to be one of the best interviews in the film.
Right.
And, because they both saw the similarities in each other, and they even started asking each other questions about their life. And at one point, she even said, yeah, the Democrat Party, my mom, forgive me, has messed us over. So even they found similarity,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, but on the street, if you had put them on the street, my father would have been over here, she would have been over here. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think that's the beauty of making films in a way, and I don't think you necessarily get that. You get very
Yeah.
different kind of joy through narrative
Yeah.
filmmaking. It's a different kind of process. Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to be a spy. I used to talk to people in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So you get to see what the people think, and they don't all agree, and they all tell you, they're just going to tell you what they think, and it's valuable when you're trying to sort out how to deal with the population. And so that sort of informs a lot of how I see things. And so I'm a A's fan. I like baseball, and I talk about it quite a lot. And there's a lot of anti-A's
Mhm.
fans who are, yeah, and they're mad at the team, right? And so there it is. Oh, look. I don't have my hat. I don't have any hats in here right now. I got a Dodger hat. I got a
Yeah.
Giants hat. I got a Padres hat. I like all those teams. But whenever anybody who's a reporter goes and tells the story of Sacramento and the A's, it sells more when they tell a negative story. I go into town, I go see my friends who aren't particularly big A's fans or baseball fans or anything. And I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, we think it's great. We love it. It's so nice to walk down to Sutter, the park there, and go see a game. There's all kinds of people, Eli, that I've met that have said either, oh, I love baseball. I'm so glad it's in my hometown. Or they've said Sacramento has a great baseball history. It goes back 100 years. We're so stoked to have baseball here. Or they've said, I don't care about baseball. I just love that we have this park down here, and it's another reason to go down there, and I've enjoyed it. Right? Like all these positive things. But that doesn't, for whatever reason, that isn't what the reporters report about. They report about how stupid the A's are and how evil they are, and they turn the A's and the ownership into into like this warped reality. Where look, there are bad things about the A's, right? But if you only go and tell that story because it gets excitement and it gets excited reactions, well, then all of a sudden you get comments like this dickhead right here. Look at this, Pete. You're garbage. Your opinion on the A's are worthless, right? That's what these sell to. They sell to clowns like Jared or Jaded Course, and they get that passion from them instead of just telling the real story. And you could tell the conflict within your story. You can go talk to the negative A's people and the positive A's people and the Sacramento fans. So, but what makes money is getting Jaded Course, who obscures his identity, to say something nasty in a public setting. I mean, what kind of an asshole does that, right? Like, that's what they want. They want that kind of an asshole to show up and click on their stuff so they can sell Cadillacs.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. I was that in on a meeting in it was sort of a very revelatory meeting in that it's the most important variable for a news story is one thing: hypocrisy.
Yeah.
So it's not the news, it's not the truth, it's not it's hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. Yeah. If you have a story that shows the hypocrisy of somebody or the other side or the political candidate, that's what people want. And so that tells you, but you can get mad and say, well, that's wrong for the reporters should focus on the hypocrisy.
Right.
But the reporters just say, well, but that's what you, the people, want.
Right.
That's what you, the people, click on. Because if you don't click on it, we'll sell it.
Right.
We'll go to the happy stories. So it was a little demoralizing because I was just like, oh my God, that's all we're doing here is just looking for hypocrisies. Okay, that's a hypocrisy. Write about it. And sometimes there's some of them there are, they need to be told. I mean, there's some stories that are untruthful and are hypocritical, and we need to expose that. And that's okay because you're exposed to somebody else's hypocrisy. But it is the way it's just where we live in, and you have to look at. I see a lot of people online on Twitter, and they're upset that somebody like Tucker Carlson or somebody like Candace Owens is getting so many more followers.
Right. Yeah.
Well, why is that? It's the audience. Because what they're saying, a lot of it is, sometimes they say something that's, okay, I get that. But if they're saying things like, okay, the president, the wife of the French president is the man, and they're like, okay, well, where's the evidence? Okay, it's just scandalous stuff, but that's what people want. So I don't know if we've really changed that culture, because as a little boy, I remember going into the supermarket, and you was the right by the checkout counter, you was the National Enquirer, you was the all these lies, right? I mean, they're up there, and you see people buy them, and I,
oh my gosh, so
and I would ask my mom, she said, "Oh, that's just garbage. That's for people who like gossip," and I go, "But everybody's buying it." And so, after maybe 3 or 4 years, I finally got my mom to buy me one of them, just to read it. And guess what? I read the whole thing cover to cover.
Yeah.
Because
it's sticky.
It was ridiculous. There was escapism. There was something, but that culture out of the 80s, we now have it in the podcast world. We're still attracted to the same old crap.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And that's like part of this thing where, like, if you can make something that somebody else will share, that it gets amplified, and the algorithm rewards things that are shared. And it means, hey, allow people to see this stuff more. It's popular. Not that it's high quality, not that it's an accurate thing, not that, as reported the other day, and he's a national reporter. He has got a dream job. He writes about sports for a living. His name is Tim Keown, Keown, and he's from the Bay, and he writes terrible stuff about the A's. And so he tees up another one, and it's like, dude, why are you doing that? Tell both sides of that story. Tell what Sacramento loves and what Sacramento could have, instead of bashing Sacramento and making it look like they're full of a bunch of jerks. Tell the whole story, but they don't, because what he wants is he wants to bait those anti-A's fans to forward that story and create this narrative. And here's the thing that's insidious about that is because it's the preponderance of the story, that becomes the fact in the AI world. And it grabs on. And I'm not being some kind of like crazy AI kook, but AI takes the next most likely word. And if you write John Fisher, it'll guess the next three words are is an asshole, and it's like, oh, but that's because that's all of the conversation, right? And so the public discourse starts to be a self-fulfilling prophecy where all of this anti-discourse, this discordant discourse, starts to self-populate into the greater society, into the zeitgeist. And it's a false approach to these things because there's no critical thought. All of these things, they hate rigor. And so if you throw rigor at something and it starts to die, it's like, hey, well, that narrative about Michael Brown and how he died was a narrative. It wasn't actually, it can't withstand rigor, right? And so a guy like you is like, hey, let's take a look at this story. And you find these truths. Gosh, they're really important for us to understand. Even if they're uncomfortable, they're important for us to understand it. Even if we reject it, we still need to be able to hear something that counters this very sticky, very compulsive laden message that we were given about pick any topic, Charlie Kirk, whatever topic you want, and people are never going to be movable. And that's on all of us for being so firm when we see a piece of media that we can't go, what's the other side say? What's reasonable? Is that reason? I like to say, is that reasonable and is it rational? Right. And so when I'm thinking about making a movie, I'm trying to make reasonable, rational movies that are entertaining. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to throw all this other candy into my story just to get a response.
Yeah. And I think it's just I think the only thing that you should do is just create the best stuff that you can today and just hope that it stands the test of time. So something like that's what our objective with What Killed Michael Brown, the documentary was that, hey,
Yeah.
I guess we're the only people in all of America that decided to kind of go down there and tell the truth. There's about 8 other documentary on the other side that tell the version closer to the hand up, don't shoot narrative.
Right.
Well, the question is, well, why are there 8 of them over there and only one of us over here?
Right.
And we don't think about stuff as anything special.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just Americans. We just have we just kind of came up the race track just because of the history of our family in the civil rights movement and everything. But yeah, the big question though is, well, why was America divided? Why did so many people buy into the narrative? What did they get out of it? Why do so many people need a negative story about the Oakland A's?
Yeah.
Why are they? Because they feel like they're the forgotten children of the Bay Area. What is it? What is it? I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area. I was a Dodger fan in the Bay Area. I love the Oakland A's. Actually, never liked the Giants.
Yeah.
You have Ricky
That's
Henderson.
kind of how I was when I grew up too. A little bit of both, A's and Dodgers. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the A's games were the closest that we should go to. So I've been to maybe about 20 of them. But the thing is that, but the point is that in a way, we Americans sort of like should pride ourselves as being people who are honest and truthful. But the thing is, we have so many narratives running through the country.
Yeah.
And those narratives are much more sexy, much more cool than the boring old truth. Which is, in the case of Michael Brown, nothing happened. A kid charged a police officer.
Yeah.
And, after grabbing the police officer's gun, and there's 2 shots going off, and he charged the officer. That's it. That's all that happened. It was not an interesting story.
Yeah.
The only thing that made it interesting was that the kid was black and the officer was white. But if you look at where Michael Brown died, if you look on the map, right, literally about 300 or 400 yards away, is a city called Jenny's, and Jenny's is 99% black. Ferguson happens to be one of the more white cities, about 30-40% white in the area that's predominantly like 95-99% black. There
Right.
wood, which is right on the other side of Ferguson, and maybe 1,000 yards away, is 99% black. If the shooting had happened with one of the officers, you've never heard Michael Brown.
Sure.
He was just
Yeah.
shot in the most perfect place. There was the optic, there was everything. So I think that, so with the Oakland A's, with the Oakland A's, or with any negative story, with any hypocrisy, it's the optic. If we know what the narratives are in the country, and so if we have a story, we should fit it into
Right.
that narrative and ride it for power, monetize it, and you've got a home run.
Yeah.
And that's what the left
Yeah.
did with Michael Brown.
Yeah, and they're good at that party is great at combining their messaging, into a unified theme. And I don't want to make this about politics, but there's definitely politics in our messaging, and the left is particularly good at that. I ultimately don't know what happened to Michael Brown. There's people that say conflicting things. I can't care about everything, and so that happened a long time ago. I think any young person's death is a tragedy. But I also believe if you put your hands on a police officer, especially in their squad car, I have a saying, Eli, and it's going to be cold, but I'm a war guy, so I just tell it like it is. People that don't want to get shot act like it, And if you act like you don't, if you act like you want to keep your baseball team, you get to keep it. And if you act like you don't, you don't, because everything's a competition. And so when we see this competition happen, it's unfortunate that those circumstances got together, and maybe the officer could have made a decision 5 minutes earlier that might have de-escalated, and maybe it was just going to happen that day, because that's how the gods of war are. They don't abide training or anything else. If they want something, they take it, and that's what the gods of war do. But yeah, it's terrible. And then to hear that like that, a lot of movies get made because they know they're going to make money. And unfortunately, Michael Brown's death was very profitable for a lot of people, made a lot of people a lot of money. And that's why you get a lot of messaging on that side, because it's a message that we'll consume and we'll come back to it. But your movie was doing pretty good too, though, right?
Yeah. And I was kind of sure with the view on the left, you made even more money because I think my dad, intellectual firepower, he would have been able to craft that narrative. I mean, he made that narrative like bulletproof. So it would have been in every college, every institution, it would be shown. But, this was more of a rebuttal type of film. So it shook off in the beginning. It came out in the right time. It came out at the right time. It made a decent amount of money. It made the most money of any film that I've done. But it was more of a hey guys, this is more the truth of what happened. And this is an investigation to the variables, the values that sort of led to what may have happened. In many ways, I know that this situation is political, but in many ways, I don't think our film is political if you look at it from a more of an honest perspective. But why?
Right.
Because we're looking at what happened. We're looking at what happened to St. Louis in the 50s, in the 40s. We're looking at where you take a people who were living in slums.
Yeah.
And you condemn those slums, but they own those homes. Well, why didn't they update those homes? Why didn't they put new plumbing systems, which they were doing all over America with all the other, you have to update infrastructure. You have to do that. Why didn't they do that? They didn't do that. They condemned them, built these projects that people didn't own. And then you take a group of people and then divorce them away from the American dream.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think is going to happen? You think they're going to believe in America?
Yeah.
You think they're going to
No, of course not.
That's not political. That's not political.
Yeah.
What happened
Yeah.
was political, but
Yeah.
what we were focusing on was the more existential,
Hmm.
reality of it, and where you just basically point your finger at the white man and blame the white man for all the problems. But
Yeah.
that's not going to solve anything. That's not going to do anything. I mean, racism was just not a play in
Yeah.
Michael Brown's death. I mean, Obama wouldn't have done that if he could. He wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And instead, what they did was they forced that systemic racism narrative onto our country.
Yeah.
And that poor town
Yeah.
has paid the price for that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
met.
And that poor town could be 150, 200 towns across the South. Like I used to drive across the nation every year on a veteran focused charity drive across the nation. And I'd always take the state routes and the smaller highways back because that's how you see America and that's how you get to talk to people. And when you drive through Georgia and you're nowhere near Atlanta, there's not a lot of wealth out there. I drove into Selma because I wanted to see Selma, and I was shocked at how dilapidated and run down and boarded up that place is. And so is that any one particular person's fault? Is it a political fight that happened in DC? Why is Selma so shitty? That should be an icon of American history when we're trying to struggle with this racial divide. And it's not a nice place. It's a ruin in a lot of places. And that's crazy. That doesn't sit well, right? So that's not a white problem. That's not a black problem. That's an American problem. And for whatever reason, however the politics and the policies have laid these things out, there's not a lot of no. You couldn't tell me that anybody who lives in Selma is like, I've got a bright future. Like that's not going to be the common theme there, because when you look around, you see ivy overgrowing buildings on the main street in town. That's crazy, right? And so that's not what I want. I don't care what party you're from. I don't think people want that to be the existence. Sure that you can look at the Edmund Pettus Bridge and it probably needs a paint job, but there it sits there and it's iconic. But you look around the other direction and you're like, man, what happened to this town? Why isn't there was a museum, civil rights museum there. Wasn't even open. Middle of the day on a Monday, you know?
Oh, wow.
What is going on here?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No, I think. I mean, part of that is just modernity. It's just the way the world moved. I think more people should move to the city for job. I've been in. I've not been to Selma, but I've been to like Mississippi, and that was interesting. You see the cotton field. And I was just like, whoa, okay. I guess in the Delta, where you should see them go on forever. But then you see one man with a tractor, just plowing it all up. And so you realize, okay, they don't need that many people.
Right.
It's a different world. It's a different world. The guy that was in my movie, How Jack Became Black. He is the black guy towards the end of the film, Vietnam War vet. He's from Selma. Martin Luther King and this other organizers met in his family's study room before the march.
Yeah.
So, but he was just. But actually, it's an interesting story, but it's somewhat related. But I asked him, I said, okay, well, what's it like growing up with segregation? And, especially in that time, and how are you still independent, still individualistic today? Like you're just a very strong character. And he said, he was raised by his grandparents on a farm. And he said they never let him experience segregation. They never let him go into town.
See, that doesn't follow, right? Like, I'm not supposed to believe that. But there's Jeff saying it. It's so crazy. Go ahead, please. Sorry for interrupting, but that's a big point,
No, but they educated him. They raised him. Church educated him, everything.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of why they did that was for him to develop his own individuality, to develop his own character, free of any racial constraint. because blacks
Right.
back then in people's segregation, there was no such thing as black. There was no black
Mm.
identity. There was none of that. There was no politics. You were just trying to be the best human being you could be, and you felt sorry for the white people because the white
Yeah.
people had the politics of a white identity. They had to be superior. They had to, carry themselves in such a way.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
and black kind of knew it was a lie because they were often very educating themselves and so forth. So the point is, and so then one day, he decided that he's gonna get a job. So he gets his bike, rides downtown Thelma, and walks through the front door of a shoe shop. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're supposed to go through the back." And that's where he realized, oh, there's segregation everywhere. And he said, okay. Came back to his grandparents and they said, yes, that's the real world. But you have to find your own way. You have to find your own ways to succeed in life. So his way was to join the war, went to Vietnam, and get put on point in a patrol point, get shot twice. So he's barely out of Thomas in Vietnam, gets shot twice.
Yeah.
But who came to his rescue? White kid from Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Texas. So for him, that was the real side of America. That was the fact that, okay, I grew up in this segregated town. But in Vietnam, the ones that saved my life were the white boys from these
Right.
most racist parts of America. And so that's but that kind of goes back to the story that you're focusing on. Nobody really tells those stories. Nobody wants to focus on those stories. They want to focus on Michael Brown.
Right.
And so I think that's
Yeah.
why it's up to us to tell those stories.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And uh, the version that I would tell of that story is just going on combat patrols, and everybody's like, if we paint the government center, the Afghans are going to love the government. And I'd be like, well, let's go find out if that's true. And I would go talk to people. And you know what they didn't care about? They didn't care about any fucking paint on any fucking building. They had real problems. And all you had to do is ask them. And this is the thing is like, we often want to prescribe a problem and the solution for people that we don't care to know or want to interact with. It's just a bad way to deal with people in general. If you go to Selma and say, hey, what's the number one problem that we could solve today in this town, you could stay in that town for 10 years just constantly solving simple small problems and improving the condition of that town. What else would help is to somewhere in that county or the next door county start building cars. You build a factory and all of a sudden, because that's the other thing you notice when you go through the South, like, why is it so wealthy here? 5 miles that way, it's crap. And then you find out, oh yeah, Toyota built a plant over in this part of Tennessee. You're like, oh my God, that's the power of this place. 2 counties away, it's still driving revenue, right? And because a lot of bad politicians did a lot of bad stuff in the middle of the century, you'll see that proverbial road that'll turn and it'll go away from that town that gets starved out, and the highway just changes. Still a road, but it's no longer the highway, and that town gets starved. That's a lot of what happened to Selma. It's just they went around it instead of celebrating it, and so
Well,
all of these things that you're saying. Yeah.
that guy had to leave. He left. So you
Yeah.
leave.
You have to. Yeah.
You have to leave. So that when you were in Afghanistan, there was a job, right?
Yeah.
The people that you met, there was no job.
There's no jobs. No, I mean they were
In
farmers,
Afghanistan,
right?
they were farmers. Were they still Wookiee?
Um, in general, like I would say it was where I was. They weren't even near the main road, right? So it's kind of hard to understand like how rural this is. It is the most rugged rural. It's like you live on the edge of the Sierras, and there's just nothing there, and there's not going to be anything there because there's nothing there to build a there, right? And so this is as remote as you can be, and a lot of it's no electricity, no plumbing, none of that, right? And these folks thrive there, but they live in a very survivable kind of way. They're not risk takers. God is hyper important to them. And so if you ignore God, which we often do here in the States, because we'll say, hey, there's a separate relation of religion, church and state style. If you go to Afghanistan, that's not true in Afghanistan. They need God to help them live. They need the Taliban to help them live. They need our help to help them live. They need all these things just to up their level of survival. Because just because you have enough food and shelter for that day doesn't mean that 2 days from now it's not going to change. And so they're clinging on the edge of everything. So if there's a job to be had in the city, they're going to take it, even if they don't like it and they hate it. I saw a guy, he had a cab over, not a semi, but like a big working truck, right? It's a cab big enough to have cab over where the cab sat like that. And it had a rollover. And so this thing is smirched and all of the window is shattered. And this guy was driving, looking through what part of the window he could see out of. That's how hard these people live, right? And so we can't comprehend that. We can't comprehend, like, why wouldn't you just go to your glass guy and get a new, like, well, that's not possible, for whatever reason, that guy couldn't do that. Maybe he crashed that day, but it looked pretty old, that truck. But that always stands out to me. It's like, well, as we try to understand their world, you have to be in it to see it. And if you're not willing to go to Ferguson, if you're not willing to go to Shajoy, Afghanistan, you're not going to see the reality of what it's like to be those people.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, going to Ferguson obviously changed me, because we used the reality of the layout of the town. We used to do that. Yeah. So if you go to Afghanistan, which I've never been, I mean, that should give you a whole different world.
This is like what I call the ground truth, and so when you sit in a room with a bunch of producers or a bunch of generals or colonels or whatever it is, everybody has great intention. They have all kinds of education. There's a great example of this. So everybody's trying to solve these problems, and there's all this intelligence and all this money and all this capacity in this room, right? But I call it the spaceship because you're nowhere near the ground. It's like you're on the Enterprise, and then you might beam a couple of guys down for 45 minutes, but that's it. Like, they don't know anything about what's going on. And so it's going to leave chaos in its wake. And so I was out in this one very, very remote district, right? And again, it's another place. There's nothing there to build a road to there because there's nothing there for there, So it's that kind of place. And one of the State Department guys says, "Hey, Pete," because I built up respect with these guys. "Hey, Pete, what TV channel?" He was trying to get me. "What TV channel do they watch out there?" He wanted to see what I knew about these people. And I said, "Oh, Dennis, there's no electricity out in that valley. They're not watching TV, man. They're farmers. That's it. That's what they do." And the room went silent because they hadn't even considered the fact that there's no electricity. And that changes everything. These people live in houses made out of the earth. There are no trees. It's just every kind of rock you can imagine and mountains and maybe pomegranate trees. That's it. That's how they live. And again, to try to prescribe some kind of solution for them or for Ferguson or for Selma without going there and knowing those people, it's not doable.
Well, one thing that interests me about Ferguson is a reporter from one of the St. Louis channels came out last year. I think it was the 10th anniversary of the shooting. And he came out to interview me, "Hey, well, I'm not, I've read everything, I spent at least 6 months in Ferguson." And after the interview, I said, "Well, what is it like then if we released the film during the pandemic?" Sure, I was never able to go back and show the film. And so I said, "Well, what is it like now?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? You've got a boy club coming in. You've got all this money that came in. And how can you be worse off?" He said, "It's just this. There's there's people that make it out one by one, and that's good.
Yeah.
But overall, the community is not doing well."
Yeah. And if we teach a community if you teach a community that they can't do well, whether they're homeless or impoverished or whatever it is, they're going to believe you. And they're going to believe you that they can't do well. And it's going to be really hard to get en masse people to step up because there's no reason to believe that it's going to work for them. They're assuming that the system is going to fail them. That's how poverty and neglect work, is you believe that that's your condition and it's not changing.
So then the question becomes, there's a place define you. There's a place trap you. In other words, the place is what it is. And so Ferguson is what it is. If my
Yeah.
father would always say, well, if you want a better life, you have to leave.
Yeah.
That's what he did. I mean, he left the South Side, Chicago, ended up in, California. That's,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, because some places are made to are different. I mean, some places are
Yeah.
places where you should move upward, and some places are not.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
Afghanistan out there in the middle of nowhere, and the people have a
Yeah.
way of living, then yeah, they're not going to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why should they?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And they would feel, unless they dealt with culture, and who's going to teach them about that? That's going to be all self-taught. That's probably going to be a genetic thing where the person's like, I just got to get out of this place, because no matter where they were, they would have to get out of that place, and they're made to ramble because that's just how they're wired. But the rest of them, you got to stick together to survive. Women have to get married early because it's a program, and you have to abide the program, because if you don't, you stand out, you get killed, you know, and that's just the hard truth of all that stuff. And so some guy that leaves Ferguson to try to find a better future, yeah, you go to the big city, and if that doesn't work, you try another big city or whatever, or you meet a gal and you decide this will be good enough, and then you build your life there. But that's easy to understand in the micro. It's really hard to fix in the macro.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. It depends on the individual. So I think maybe we're making the mistake as the country of thinking that we guys solve this whole area. I mean, I was thinking, it's just the only thing you should do is help each individual, and if they want to do
Right.
it. I mean, look, some of us even have family members,
Yeah.
who may be, drug addicts, who may be, suffering from some issue. Sometimes you
Yeah.
gotta let them ride their ride. Sometimes you
Yeah.
can't do anything for them. I mean, it's just one of those things, and I think
Yeah.
it hurts us because we see ourselves as a very modern people. We think that we have
Yeah.
solutions to everything. We have pills for everything. We have
Mhm.
all these
Yeah.
psychological constructs.
Yeah.
We have
Right.
all of our elites are telling us if we follow them, we'll be in the promised land. And
Yeah.
then go, no, no, nothing change it. And
Yeah.
then,
Boy,
yeah,
and that's yeah.
you have to have a purpose in life. You have to have a purpose in life, and that's why
Yeah.
I think that one of the more profound questions in what killed Michael Brown was Bob Worston, who is sort of like a civil rights leader, a veteran, and he says the one question that Black Lives Matters will never ask is Michael Brown in any way responsible for his death?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think that the disease in our culture today is that we have all these people who have said, no, these people over here, because of the color of their skin, are not responsible, or these Afghans over here, because the fact that they've never came into the modern world, are not
Right.
responsible. And so, but once you take responsibility away from people, you destroy them.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because you're gonna either do something wrong to them,
Yeah.
or you gonna
Yeah.
patronize or paternalize them. No, everybody got a
Yeah.
responsibility on this earth, and so I think that's why you said that earlier
Yeah.
about Michael Brown. That's why in Bob Woodson again say if Michael Brown had valued his life, he would have never walked in the middle of the road. He would have never
Yeah.
charged a police officer. Because somebody
Yeah.
who says, you know what, I've got to go home, I've got to go study for my exam to become a plumber, or I've got to write the college essay, or
Man,
somebody
oh
who
man.
has that on
Yeah.
the back of their head, it's not going to charge a police officer.
Right. There's so much in that, and there's early on in our show's history, we had a guy named Devone Bogan on the show, and he started a nonprofit that focused on trying to get, in this case, Richmond, California, which is very dangerous at this time. He's like, how do we pick the 25 most felonious people in Richmond? Because it was murdering people well outside. Richmond's not that big of a place. It's 125,000 people. And so their murder rate was leading the nation at the time. And so he went in and he built a case management program where first thing he did is he sat everybody down at the big government table where all the big stuff happens, and he put their names on tents, Ron Jackson, whoever, right? All these names go around this thing. And then he just said, I'm sorry, we've let you down as a community. We want to give you an opportunity to change your life. And then they showed him their police record, showed him video of them, talked about the numbers and how many of them how many people in this room would die, how many people would, do all these things. And then they started case managing these guys, and they made them realize that their lives were valuable. And the guys who were case managing were guys who had life sentences and done time in San Quentin. And what they were reliably able to do, and they didn't save everybody, but they were reliably able to get guys over time to calm the fuck down, stop committing crimes, and go get a trade, go get a job. And not by just like their own design, but as that kid's design. You know what? I'd like to go be a crane operator. That seems like a good life for me. And it is, by the way, right? And so these guys got turned from people that were either going to be dead or in prison or both to a labor union guy or a crane operator guy or a carpenter, and they started getting crime off the street, and it cratered the crime in that area, and it took it national. But it's a very deliberate process, and it's fraught with errors and death, and the community hates it. And here's the best thing about it is they pay these as they start to come out of their rise, right? And they give them a stipend, and they, as much work as they do, they'll get paid for it. And that's part of the exchange. And to teach them a lesson, Devone has written 1 cent checks. You failed yourself. Here's a penny. Bam, gives them the check. But when they write about this story in the news, it's always paying criminals to not commit crime. And I'm telling you right now, that program is not that. And when they are able to implement it, it works. It saves lives, right? But it's that hard to get this stuff done. It's that hard to get these young fellas to calm down, stop committing crime, believe in themselves, believe in their future, and to have someone they can rely on. And a lot of them fail before they make it. But that uncle that they got, that guy that's got a life sentence that's now out, that guy's like, don't worry, I'm not going to fail you. When you have a bad day, when you fail a drug test, when you don't show up, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be right here because I know what it is. That's what it takes, man, is an extraordinary program, extraordinary person to get a small group of people to go in the right direction. But it has a massive impact on the community because they're getting criminals off the street and turning them into valuable citizens. Who wouldn't want to fund that? At least Pete asks,
No, I think you have to do that in a way. I mean, one thing that did mischief from a lot of, I don't know if he has like a religious component to it, but I think a lot of what mischief although is like the spiritual component.
Sure,
whether you're religious or not, because the whole point is, I think, I mean, what I mean by like a religious component is believe is something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what differentiates man from animal in a way, is that man has this higher aspiration, has this belief. If you look back at the history of man's always trying to wrestle with the greater things, or what these stars up here, trying to make meaning of it. I mean, the Egyptians have how many gods? Jews, we're going to have one monotheistic God, and then we have Jesus. But the Greeks, I mean, it's just been this big wrestling, and so I wonder if he has that religious component to that, if that's helpful or not.
If I remember correctly, it's been a while. There's 8 phases, and one of them is sort of in this realm are they put them in a mentorship program with someone else who looks like them, and so they do give them some culpability. But I've learned a lot about this from the show and some special things that I've done. But there is a thing that's insidious in the gang communities where they teach you to devalue yourself. The group first, you have to belong to this thing, and you don't count. And nobody gets out. And so they put all this negative stuff. And so it takes an extraordinary set of things to break a person free of that, to get them to reject who they are and where they're from. Right. And we talked about this earlier. And it's powerful when you hear these guys that have done life in prison, have murdered people, when they've rehabilitated themselves and the wisdom they have, man, it's powerful. And it doesn't matter what your politics are, because these people went and did the hardest thing. They killed someone and they came back from it. And they are the most grounded, rational people who have tons of culpability in their hearts. They're like, no, it's my fault. I didn't kill that. One guy said, I didn't kill that person, but I didn't go to that house. I went to that house to cause harm. And then that person killed the wrong person, but I'm culpable as much as that person was, because we went there to hurt somebody, and that was wrong. Right. And to be able to say that, to have your ego under control enough to say that, and then build a real life, that's an evolution that most of us don't get to, because they've gone from there's no future for me to look at what I am now today, free, and the appreciation for who they are and the money that they get to make. It's a remarkable thing and unfortunately they have to go on this awful path, and the family of the victim obviously has this never ending path, but you can get redemption from that.
Yeah, I do believe that. I do. I mean, I think we see more negativity today in the online world, like all these very negative comments about criminals and so forth. I mean, I think there's some criminals that maybe just lost. I mean, there's some people that the run this
like there's criminally insane people for sure.
Yeah, but the one that they have the potential, the minute you take that responsibility, that's how you become a person. That's how you become an individual, because you think, that's my mark.
Yeah,
that's me. I did that. But how do you want to live the rest of your life?
This isn't scientific by any measure, but it is a thing that I've noticed with these guys that I've talked to that, again, have rehabilitated from life sentences. And they all said right around 11 years was when they were old enough, mature enough, and had been counseled enough that they went, you know what, this is all me. This is all me. And that began their journey of redemption. So they'd done these 11 years in conflict with themselves and the system. Then they accepted their responsibility and started moving forward in a way that one of the dudes, this person shot somebody, murder too, right? Like, it's pretty significant. And he said, I realized that the people on the parole board, that they had to speak for me. They had to account for me to the entire state of California. And so they got to know they can trust me, that I'm not going to go crazy and lose my mind again one night. And that changed who I needed to be. And then I worked to become that person that could be accountable, and I could look at them. And almost to a man, they've all said something similar. Once that final gate got cleared, they all got parole afterwards. And it didn't matter what anybody was going to do to them, because they're like, doesn't matter. All that matters is I stay on this path and I get out. Because some of them, like, there's some kind of fuckery within the system or whatever. And they're like, doesn't matter. It no longer matters. That's not important. All that's important is I stay on this path and I just go forward towards freedom, life, and everything else. And it's remarkable when they figure that redemption out, those moments that change them. But unfortunately, they got to go to prison and kill somebody first in these cases to get there. That's how extraordinary and hard these things can be. It's not. None of this is easy work. Like the Ferguson thing, right? To someone who firmly believes that there was this atrocity that happened, the only way to get them to come out of that, and I'm not saying it's not true to them, I'm sure it is true, is through extraordinary effort.
Yeah. It's a strategy in a way, because you got to wait that long in your life to find that right path. But you find that right path. I mean, I think that's the people say, well, why is America so violent? Why do we have so much violence in America? Well, because we're a free country.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know how to live in freedom. And so when you have a lot of forces in our country working against freedom, that I think create problems. Whether it's in St. Louis, where you divorce people from the American dream, where you create a life of dependency, live in a Section 8 house, you're on welfare. By the way, Michael Brown's father, his name is Michael Brown. He was born to a middle-class Black family. His father, I believe, was a dentist. So what happened? What happened? The culture shifted. He became, kind of went into the hip hop direction, didn't quite follow. Even his mother, she hated being on welfare as a young child. She grew up in North St. Louis, hated being on welfare, but she made some bad choices. And ended up, and then you got the kid, Michael Brown, who is sort of law. Well, how you find that path? So these guys got to go prison for 11 years, and they find these
right,
and then some kid like Michael Brown. That's why we in the film we say strategy.
Yeah.
We're not
It
we're
is.
not we're
Yeah.
not here to beat up on on Michael Brown. It is the
Sure.
tragedy. I
Yeah.
do believe, yeah. I mean, I do a lot of work on the south side of Chicago.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I am surrounded by people who've been in prison.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, no, but you already know by the way they carry themselves,
Sure.
the dignity they carry themselves with, but they have been in prison. And
One of
it's
my
so,
subjects, one of my subjects in the Prison Chronicles said that prison was an extension of their community. And I'm like, that's not what I want. And I also realized when he was describing his life, he's from Detroit, he was describing combat. And I'm like, that's combat, man. You're trying to get off the X. I've got different terminology because I got theory behind what you're doing, but you're supposed to have PTSD. He's like, of course we have PTSD. Why wouldn't we have PTSD? And I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you? Like, it's the same as me. And so there's that element too, where like these folks were exposed to so much harm, so much cortisol into their brain and everything that of course they act differently. I acted differently when I first came back. It took me a long time to calm down and get myself right. Right. And so why would it be different for these guys? If you want to get shot, a good place to go is the south side of Chicago and be a black dude, because that's where you're going to get shot, right? And when we do look at our violence, a lot of it is compartmentalized in these small groups that are probably underserved, or have this paradigm and this conundrum of being stuck on the south side with no belief they can get up. I've got family that are south side people, and they think differently than I do. They like being in the ghetto. They want that, and they want that grittiness, they call it. And I'm like, okay, like I don't understand it, but yeah, it's a real thing, man.
yeah, yeah. It's a different world. I mean, it's a different world.
It is. It
I
is.
have
Yeah.
my dad grew up south of that. He was born in the South Side and then moved further south. But my grandfather used to drive up and down Keene Drive,
Hmm.
and I found a picture of Keene Drive right by where the old block is, and you
Mm-hmm.
see a supermarket there, and across the street is the deli, and you go, my God, the people lived better back then. Michelle Obama was born there. And now since then, since her birth, that community has just gone down. There's a
Yeah.
McDonald's. You should see the the classic McDonald's structure. Board it up.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to
Yeah.
even move in there. Nobody wants
Right.
to move in there. So yeah,
Yeah.
and so and but then you go. I mean, I've done documentaries that we see the drone up in the air, and you go, oh my God, we should see the whole Chicago skyline right
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
kids in that block
Yeah.
have never been there.
Yeah.
They've never been downtown. They've never
Right.
been. So they're really no different than some guy in Afghanistan. They have no.
Yeah. No. Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And why would we expect them to be different? Like they
well,
don't live in that world. You know.
yeah. What I think though is that I think it's a big shame in America today. I think that's where I think a lot of frustration come from. Is so why is the school in the old block in the Democrat run city in
Mm.
all of this? Why is that school only have 4% math proficiency?
Yeah.
6% literacy proficiency, grade level proficiency.
Yep. Yep.
Why aren't
Yep.
the people not fired? Why are the TV crews? There goes to your point earlier. Why are the TV crews outside the school shaming the people there?
Yeah.
Why are they shaming the union, the teachers union? Why are they
Yeah.
doing that? No, but they want to talk about how the union celebrates them black militant birthday, but they're not talking about the actual problem. And
Yeah.
so that's what we've become. I think I guess to your point is the cost of becoming a click-based society is that we let the real problem fester. Because how is it possible that we're, especially after the wave of Black Lives Matters, Rich Ferguson with the official birth it started after Trayvon Martin, but Ferguson was the first one. And so
Mm.
that's 2014. And it was 11 years later. And nobody cares about the school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's why you have to leave. And there are a lot of parents still, there are a lot of parents in that neighborhood that born there, but they're smart
Yeah.
enough. But what they do is they get like a voucher and they go to a Catholic, parochial school,
Sure.
or some private
Yeah.
school to get the kid out. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that are trying. They're trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who fights vouchers? It's like it's one particular party that doesn't like vouchers, right? But parents ask for it. When your kid is stuck in a bad school, whatever you think of bad schools doesn't matter. You want to get out, and you should. It's tax money, so why wouldn't you give that money back to the person and let them put it to work at a school that does well, right? I don't know. Anyhow, hey, listen, I've had you for almost an hour and a half. It's been wonderful, and I love talking to you about the movies and the philosophy of socializing, social things, man. It's all a wonder. Tell everybody where to go find your stuff, including your Substack and everything else you want to promote. There's the link, by the way, everybody, for Eli's Man of Steel Productions company, so you can look at that. But what do you want to promote now before we wrap this up?
Yeah, mainly the Man of Steel production has everything. I'm on Substack at Man of Steel production. You should type that in. And then I am on Twitter at Hebro, HEBRO _ Steel, STEELE. Great talking to you, Pete. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to put your link up for your Substack. You guys can find him on X. You know what to do. Bam, there's that. And you can see that in the comments. Everybody else, I'll see you all later. Have a good day. I'll come back and say goodbye to you in a second, Eli. Ciao, y'all. See you tomorrow.